So my question is fear. What is fear? It seems like there's many forms of fear. I woke up this morning, I had fear to get up and ask this question. There's fear of not getting your teachings directly, absolutely, clear as day. So if you could just talk about fear, what is it?
If you direct attention inside yourself in the moment of experiencing fear, you can find out the answer for yourself. However, I will continue to speak.
Thank you.
Just to give you a little bit of direction in that process of finding the answer for yourself, because only that's the true answer. It has to be there in your experience. So you'll have to have with a certain alertness when fear arises. You say, oh, how did that come? What was the process leading to it? And inevitably you find, I'm sure you will find, certain thought processes about not what's happening now, but what might happen in some future moment, as this did this morning when it arose. And at this very moment, if you do not leave this moment mentally, your mind, and think, am I going to get it, what he says? Am I really going to get it? Or if you think, what clever thing can I say next? Then more fear may arise. But in this moment, as you stand here, look at me, there's nothing to fear, is there? Where's the fear now? The fear is only before it happens. But before it happens, so it's the fear of the future. It's not the fear of the present. Now, since the future doesn't actually exist, only the present exists, it's the fear of nothing. It has no basis in reality, because when the future comes, it's the present again. There is only the present. And in the present moment, there is nothing to fear. So the fear arises when you become drawn into certain thoughts in your mind. You identify with the thoughts, and then you project yourself mentally away from the now. And that's the origin of fear. I'm talking about psychological fear. There is something else that is sometimes called fear, that happens when there is true and immediate real danger. So if there's true and immediate real danger, a wild animal suddenly appearing here, or if I point a gun at you, I won't, you may experience a contraction happens, or your heart starts beating fast. Something is going to happen, so you may have to remove yourself, or you may have to fight, or whatever. That is not really fear, it's the instinctive response of the organism, because some action may or will be required. And so you may run away. So your heart, the energy is already building up. And that is also called fear, but that is not the fear that we are talking about. And it's fairly rare that you're actually faced with actual situations where this kind of fear would arise. So 99.9% of your fear is psychological fear, and that applies to virtually everybody. And for those people to whom that not, if they live in a very dangerous place, please ask me another question and we'll address that. because there's also a spiritual teaching in that. If you lived in a place where there's absolute chaos every day, wherever that happens to be on the planet at this time, if you lived in Afghanistan or Somalia and you never know, am I going to reach the end of the day, or is some gunman going to burst in here, could happen at any moment. There's a wonderful teaching in there too, but we won't talk about that here because that's not your reality. Your reality is psychological fear. So how do you then remove psychological fear? Well, you observe how it arises, and you observe where your mind is taking you all the time, and where you follow the mind with your attention. And once you notice that this is happening and fear is arising, you can say, okay, what is the reality of what is there to fear in this moment? Because that's all there is. Then you stop following your thoughts and you take attention into this moment and you realize nothing. In other words, presence. You become present to this. More and more your life becomes present moment centered rather than future centered. You're a young person, so a young person's life tends to be more future centered. If you were 70 or 80 years old, you would probably be more past centered, but both are dysfunctional states. So
thanks.
Nothing personal in that. It's a collective dysfunction.
Sure. I know, I see it.
So the shift in consciousness is your life becomes present moment centered rather than past or future centered. And with that comes an enormous shift, that is the shift in consciousness, which means you can still deal with the future, the so-called future, preparing things, taking steps, making plans. Of course you do those things. You can refer to the past, because sometimes you may need to remember things from the past. You can even learn from mistakes you made in the past. Oh, yesterday, the other day I did that. I'm not going to do that again because it hurts when I do that. So that's good. But you don't live there anymore. You don't live in the past and you don't live in the future. And you would be amazed to see how many people live in past or future. They live there. And it's insane, but it's but it's normal. It's normal. Normal insanity is not recognized as insanity because it's normal. So then your practice then is the focus of your attention increasingly is on the present moment. What is the next thing that I need to, what is the step that I need to take now to deal with this now? Not tonight, not tomorrow, now. Doesn't mean you never think about future or past. No, of course you still sometimes do. But you don't live there anymore. You live in the now. And so it's a reversal, because in the normal dysfunctional state, you live in past and future, and occasionally you visit the now. And when occasionally you visit the now, suddenly you feel so good. You feel, oh, life is good. You feel joyful. You feel intense sense of aliveness. You see beauty even in little things. You can relate to another human being with loving kindness without wanting anything from him or her. You can do an act of kindness and help another without any secondary thoughts of what you want to achieve by helping this person, which means you bring in future again. You experience the joy, for example, of helping, not as a means to an end, as an end in itself. And all that you experience when, and people who usually live in past and future, many of them occasionally visit the present. Otherwise, they would be totally unhappy. Now they're only 90% unhappy. So occasionally they visit the present, and then that's when they feel particularly alive and particularly joyful, or they have a creative insight. Why? Because for a moment the mind stopped and there was that openness. But this can be reversed. From being an occasional visitor to the now and living in past and future, you reverse that. You become an occasional visitor to past and future, but you live in the now. And so that's the only way to become free of fear. Now, you may also occasionally experience fear rising. Normally it's associated with the thought process or triggered by a thought process. There can also be an accumulation of past fear in a human being, because if you have lived in fear over many years, then that energy field has built up inside you, and this would then be part of what I call the pain body inside you. That the fear lives in you then as an emotional energy field. So many pain bodies are made up to a large extent of fear. And sometimes when you look at certain humans who are possessed by their pain bodies, what you see when you look into their eyes is the fearful pain body. What does he want from me? Why are you smiling at me? You want something. There are many countries where the collective pain body is very strong, and if you go to those countries and you smile at people in the street, they might even run away or call the police. So this is a wonderful shift. Then you move from living, never feeling at home really, or very rarely feeling at home in this world. That means you live in past and future. And only if you inhabit the now, you actually begin to feel at home in where you are in the world. There are many humans who, wherever they go, they feel there's something wrong here. Of course, they're not at home with them in themselves. That's the practice. So and if fear rises from your pain body, all you can do is, when you draw, well, it's not produced, perhaps it was triggered by one little thought about what might happen next week. But sometimes one little thought of what might happen next week can trigger an enormous influx of fear suddenly, out of proportion to the triggering thought, and that means it's the pain body. And when that happens, you have to just be present with that and observe what it feels like as an energy field. If you don't observe it, in other words, you are the witnessing presence, it can take over your mind and make you think more fearful thoughts, because it loves that. That's all it knows. So if you should experience accumulation of old fear triggered by certain thoughts, some people have panic attacks that can be extreme manifestations of fear in the middle of the night. Okay, presence. It helps if you invite presence into your life when you're not invaded by fear. So when the fear comes, the old fear, then there's enough presence power in you to be able to observe it. But if you don't invite presence into your life in neutral situations, then of course there won't be enough presence when the fear comes, which is very challenging. So it's very simple, really. Be at home in the now, and that means you connect to who you truly are beyond mind activity.